Welcome everybody. Welcome to the students and our guests. I feel myself privileged to introduce Maruša Zorec from Ljubljana, from the ARREA Studio. Thank you very much for coming. This series is an open lecture event of the Public Building Design Department. After, for example, András Cukrovics or Markus Innauer from Vorarlberg, or Miklós Köllő and Arnold Macalik from Transylvania, we are more than happy to welcome Maruša because of her activities, her approaches, because of the works of the ARREA Studio, and because of our interests in the direction of Slovenian contemporary architecture. Thank you for everybody, and thank you for the supporter circle of the Department of Public Building Design. Because of the help, we can organize this event. I would like to ask Máté Érsek, who is the doctoral student of our department, and his research area is not far from the activities of Maruša, to introduce her. And after the lecture, there will be enough time to form questions, so please grab this opportunity, and I would like to ask Máté to organize this final part of this event.
Thank you. So we are delighted to welcome Maruša Zorec here. She's a Slovenian architect, the founder of the ARREA Studio, which was based in 2005 and is based in Ljubljana. Her works include, beside new buildings, also renovations, extensions, and other interventions in the existing building structures. And one of her most important projects was the renovation of Jože Plečnik's house in Ljubljana, which was transformed from a residential building into a community space and a museum. Other than that, her works include many public buildings, for example, cultural facilities, schools, and also contemplative spaces, also touristic facilities. Her portfolio can be characterized by subtle interventions and very sensitive contextual awareness, both culturally and historically. And besides that, she's a guest lecturer also abroad and in Ljubljana, so she teaches at the University of Ljubljana, and she has held guest lectures in Italy and Czech Republic as well. And we are delighted to welcome her here today. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Máté. Dear students, dear colleagues, it's really a big pleasure and honor to be here with you in Budapest. I haven't been for many, many years, and this morning I saw what a beautiful city you have. I've completely forgotten, and it's really reminded me that I should come and bring my students here more often. So thank you very much for the invitation. Actually, all the things started, I think, 2 years ago when a student from Hungary wrote me that he would like to meet me and set some questions on my work and on my office. And it's a very unusual thing. It never happened to me before. And when we met in Plečnik house, the discussion was really inspirative also for me, because the questions were not so easy. He knew a lot about our work, and it was really a thing that made me think to perhaps I should do the same thing with my students, that you somehow do the research deeper, you try to understand what architects actually in a certain place do, and to have and pay interest on the countries that are around us, not just traveling Japan, but really seeing the speciality of the place we come from. And that is something that interests me really a lot, and I would like to present you my work, and through that I hope also how we approach our tasks, what we do, and how me and my office actually work. The title of the lecture is Unveiling the Hidden. It was actually the title of our intervention in the Venice Biennale. We were invited 2018 to present our work, and it was actually a difficult task to reflect what actually we do and how to show this in a very small space in this very let's say, visited pavilion. So we picked and we did a small book, I will show you later, that somehow was titled like that and is discussing the dust we are discovering in the buildings we inhabitate. And the dust, as Josip Brodsky said, means the flesh and blood of time passed in the buildings. And that is something we want to keep. That is something we want to make visible. And through our pavilion there, we wanted to show how we somehow dig in the voids and the paths and open the views inside the existing buildings. So in this intervention, we paid focus also on some topics we wanted to present. And these are the topics we are interested in our work. And they are somehow beyond the program we get. They are something we never are asked for. We get the program, we get the budget, we get the site, but we are looking for something else through our architecture, and these are the topics we are trying to present. Beside that, we wanted to present also our ancestors. These are people that somehow, through our work, but more or less also through the fight to preserve this architecture, discovered through last 25 years, they became more and more somehow part of our, let's say, continuity. And I somehow started with Otto Njugovec, the architect that was the youngest one of all three. And through him, I came to Edvard Ravnikar, who was the student of Jože Plečnik. So somehow in the last, I can say 10 and 20 years, the interest for these architects became more and more popular. In 2001, I think we did a project to list the buildings of the 20th and the second part of the 20th century, because buildings in the transition time started to decay. They were demolished. We lost a lot of them. And we started the struggle actually to preserve the building as part of our history, as part of our ancestors' work. And one of the most beautiful buildings of this period is this roof of Otto Njugovec. I did a book on his work, which is this one. And through this research, I discovered somehow his relation that is so beautifully explained in the sketch of his friends, Svetozar Kžaj, that the man, the architect, is always working on the line of the horizon. And this horizon is in between the sky, where we are looking for, and the ground where we are standing. So this roof, which was unfortunately also has fallen 20 years ago and is still standing, is for me the representative of something I'm looking for in architecture. This means the freedom for the place, the freedom of space, and also it's somehow dialogue with the history. Actually, the roof is in the dialogue with the hay racks we have, and perhaps also you have here. It's a modern interpretation of these wooden structures, and it's also covering the remains of an archaeological finding of a church from the 8th century. So it's a marker, it's a landmark. It became in the last 20 years also a small icon where you see students pilgriming, somehow walking there, sending me images how they visit this small architecture there in the fields that's in the southeast of Slovenia, still standing, very endangered at the moment again. And the other architect I want to mention as part of my perhaps personal, let's say, ancestor is Wojtek Ravnikar, the group Kras, the 70s that paid attention a lot to the context, the architecture behind the small ruined farm complex that is, for me, was actually the starting point of my work, the office where I started. And we remembered this oeuvre of him. He died 15 years ago with a small intervention in a ruined, abandoned room of Architectural Museum, reminding us that the wall and the window were the essential parts of his language and his architecture. The other topics that we presented in the book were mostly dealing with the primeval space, with freedom, with the open horizon. With the primeval space, that's the view. I always show a view from my primeval space. This the view from my own room of my childhood into this forested landscape where I grew up. And this is something I want to be aware of, because these are the roots of the space that somehow shaped me. And the other primeval spaces that are taking part of my life during years is this alpine closed horizons or the open horizons of the Mediterranean Sea. So somehow in between those, let's say, vertical spaces and very open horizons, I am placed in a way between Hungarian plain and the Alpine lakes. I somehow work trying to find silence and light, discover stories and layers of the past, and using concepts and walls and trying to enable transitions in my work. I will show you some cases more precisely of the renovation projects that we do, where we started with really, let's say, we tried to work with radical concepts, but later coming to less and less possibilities to really, and trying to interwove inside the existing only small intervention, trying to find the right dialogue and the articulation of the new together with the old. Beside these renovation projects, I'm trying to show you also something that interests me in the last 10 years, let's say, how to build with wood, how to build with natural, local materials, and how to build for community. This is perhaps something that interests even me more than renovation or joining those two things together, how projects that you do are part of the community. So I don't work shops, I don't work big investments, I don't work huge new buildings. I'm more interested in the existing, in transforming, in reusing and building community through the programs that we do. Because there are lots of students, I'm really happy. I thought there will be 20 people here, but there are so many, really. Thank you very much. Therefore, I always show my first project, one of my first projects. That's a chapel in the center of Ljubljana, because I wanted to show you that it's not easy, actually, to start. This was a competition to enter the main church on Ljubljana Three Bridges, to create here shops under this house of the monastery, of the Franciscan monastery. I didn't win the competition. There was another man, architect, who won it, but he was building a big house beside it, so the priests were afraid of that, and they said, no, we will not like to go with that further on. So this main priest, he invited me to do the project, and we started to doing project for shops here. And we soon discovered that it's a danger to place that kind of program here. So he suggested me to do here on this spot an entrance into a meditation chapel. So we entered the spaces. These were 2 rooms like that, and we decided to shape the entrance like a cone, like an entrance into a cave, to do here a ramp that leads you down into the second space, to break this wall, as you see here, and orientate the altar towards the existing church. So there was a new window here, and we used the back sides niches as the wooden cladding here, connecting these already existing spaces as a place to talk with the priest, as a niche for a sculpture, and the secret entrance to the monastery. So that are the 3 materials we used. That's the white stone, that's the gray stone, and that's the wood in the back. So that's that's very old, actually, this model. We didn't use the 3D, but just to test how the light enters, and this is the entrance niche. I was really thinking a lot how to do that in this existing pediment, not to really destroy, not to really make a big black hole inside. So we somehow slowly did the shadow that invites you inside. And that's the entrance. This is very dark, I'm sorry. And that's the wooden cladding behind with an angel existing piece from the monastery just across. And the door that brings the light also inside, like you see there. And from here divides this space of intimacy from the busy commercial street. I show this chapel also because I want to tell you a story. The chapel is not a chapel anymore for many years, and the priests have decided to do here a bakery. So they called me, and told me that they want to enlarge the entrance, that they want to have big 2 ovens with chimneys inside this space. And they already had everything in mind, what they have to do. And I was really worried. Colleagues told me, you have to do it. And I was thinking for a while, and I said, no, thank you. I would not like to do that. I really don't believe that it's appropriate program for a street that has already 5 bakeries. And I don't really care about my work so much. So I just wanted to tell you how our towns are actually changing, and we as architects sometimes cannot really do nothing against this. My colleagues tried to save it, but it's just before the opening. I think they already put everything out. But the priest that I worked with, he invited me to work with him on another village, on another very important spot in our country. That's a village of Brezia in the west of Slovenia, to transform this square in front of a big, let's say, sacred place. It's a pilgrimage church with big event on the 15th of August. They did an altar in front of the church. They constructed everything, and they were sitting in this square. So he said he would like to do a permanent intervention for a permanent altar, and we didn't know somehow where to put this thing, because everything is valuable around this perimeter square. This was done by Plečnik. There is a view to the highest mountain, Triglav, and the church facade for us was also very important. So we decided to, this is the church, that's the view, this is the rearrangement that was done by Plečnik, our architect. So we decided to keep the framing of the square and place the altar on the northern wall, to enlarge this wall as a thick wall and dig in the space for the altar. And we proposed a very simple pavement here, and we let this place that is a bit lifted remain as that. The first idea actually of the priest was to kick all these things out and make a big square in front of the church. But we found the structure of the space is very interesting. The main square, the most public place, the small square, and the lifted garden, that's a more intimate space. So he respected our idea. We did a very simple pavement, and we were choosing the similar materials that were already existing there around. So this is a model of the altar, a very simple model showing the exterior and the interior. And I have to say that even later I found some really interesting examples from the same space. That's an intervention in the church done by the architect Ivan Vurnik that reminds us a little bit on this. And that's one of my favorite pieces by Jože Plečnik. This is a wooden closet that served in a school for the rituals for the Mass. Before the church on the moors, on the Barje, this wooden church, probably some of you know, was built. And this is a simple closet opening the wooden doors, but inside is a white marble. So that was something that makes this space a sacred building. So this is the process of the construction where we were all the time present, and that is something that interests me really a lot. And this is something how the square looked like years ago. Now it has also different interventions, and that's the altar, which doors are 5 meters wide, and when they open, there is the birchwood cladding inside, and the light is coming from the back, and the stairs are very low and enable the priest to come down to people. So this is the interior cladding and the seats, and the view towards the church, and the stair bringing you down. The stair is a kind of interpretation of the stair that was done by Plečnik on the other side, and we just cleaned these walls and renovated the park. On the same time, and perhaps also a little earlier, we won a competition in a very industrial town. You see partly here this metal industry on the town of Raune. That's on the north near Carinthia, near Austria. And this was a small town that grew because of the metal iron industry. And there was on this hill a castle, and beside this castle slowly some public programs were financed by this industry. This castle was a school, was a prison, but later a museum and a library. So when we came, it was in that kind of state, cars all around, neglected spaces, blocked spaces. This was the Baroque part that somehow had no contact with the garden. So the spaces were like that, full of books, full of different periods of layers of pavement, ceramics, and so on. Our idea was actually to frame this park with kind of green fields and to insert a pavement to connect all these outdoor spaces to reorganize actually the entrance that was going here through and open it on the other side and create an inner square inside. So the idea was very actually strong. All the new was connected with the pavement, with the intervention growing up from this pavement. These are some presentations of the competition. And actually we made void inside all these perimeter walls, and we kept this Renaissance structure of the castle as we found it, with the towers here and with this Baroque insertion on this part. So we placed a new entrance here in the side of the tree. We kept the tree, we kept this inner courtyard. We reorganized the whole through this new entrance where you enter and have a free floor plan inside this existing but not so valuable parts of the building. And here in this side you see the precious rooms of this old castle where the precious books actually are kept. So you see the entrance, you see the free access, and you see the entrance to the children department here. So people are guided through the new entrance here, having a square inside where they can enter also the castle that serves for exhibitions, lectures, and has the opening into the park on this side. So that's a model showing this pavement, the furniture, disposition inside these rooms. And that's my colleague Masha. We were much younger then, 25 years ago was that. And we were facing a big, challenging construction site. The man there was really 2 meters high. They were all smoking. They were aggressive. They wanted us to change the project. Where we started to dig out these big inserted walls. So the void started to be presented, but we still had to made the changes, and somehow we discovered also very interesting things, like you see this column. We didn't know about it. So through the process of cleaning, demolishing, we discovered these new void and empty spaces. And we discovered also how these processes are complex, that an architect has to moderate between different, let's say, parties involved. That are the ladies from the heritage, because the building is a local monument. That are the workers, this huge man that we had to discuss. And these are the open voids and spaces and new connections that we somehow through the process discovered. So this is the new addition on the western part where the children playroom is, and that's the line of the entrance to the main square. So all the other projects of the competition demolished and cut this linden tree. We managed to keep it, and it's still growing here after 25 years. It's the center and the roof of the square. Here you see the entrance to the library and the entrance to the old castle. We discovered that the chapel had 2 floors inside, so we cleaned the space and it's open again, and it's a lapidarium of the findings that were found around the castle. We placed a new choir here and found a window from the library you can see inside the chapel. And that's this corridor that you saw before after the cleaning and presentation. So these are the new elements, the new window, the new choir, and the new staircase that we placed. Actually, all the intervention inside the castle was a kind of a new flooring, somehow separated from the perimeter walls. And what we wanted to establish actually is a bigger and better and more transparent connection to the outdoor space, the lower spaces of the children department, and the views for them when they are there sitting on the floor and listening to the fairy tales. A couple of years later, we were working on this spot here. That's the castle I explained you now. And on this spot, we were asked to do here on this spot a small youth hostel. So you see, you have almost nothing there. There's a garage here, and that's a small building. So what we discovered actually are those two oak trees. And we placed here this hostel, as you see, as a completely wooden building. So we traced the pathway through the, between the oaks to the entrance. That's the only concrete flooring is this one. All the other buildings is completely glue laminated wood that has cuttings, and this is the concrete wall, and the basement, actually the foundation is concrete. All the rest actually are wooden glue laminated walls with a small restaurant, with the meeting hall, and with I think 40 or 50 beds in this youth hostel. So you see this is the entrance lobby, the reception, the dining room, and the corridor. So the space is conceived like the fluent void running from the entrance to one reception room, to the dining room, and up to the upper floor, where we establish some public areas, that the corridor is not just a corridor, but it's flowing towards the light, and with some programs like the library somehow making and dividing private from the public space. So this is the view. Also here, another story, the oaks are not existing anymore. A new gardener, or I don't know, housekeeper of the municipality cut them without really asking, without them being really old. So the essence of our project somehow is gone. But there was another one here. I don't know how, by occasion, we won another competition for a school on this side, which was not an easy work, because here you see this library. There is a gymnasium, and there is a sport facility here. And there was a plan to place here a big, big secondary school. And we were working a lot how to place this big program on this hill. So we digged a lot inside, and we organized the space in the way to dig another floor here, to do a parking above, and lit all the classrooms from below. So you enter this foyer, the wardrobes, and you see the forest as you saw here before when you enter. So through that space, you go upstairs beside a big lecture room to the classrooms above. So the house is a huge volume with cuttings that are lighting the inner corridors. So you see this is the digged in ground floor, the upper pavements connecting all the public areas in the back, and the growth of the volume back inside. So that's the roofscape of the intervention. So that's how the building model was set on the edge of the forest. This is the entrance to the school and the view to the forest when you enter the lobby. So this is the dining room of the school, the wardrobes and the corridors. And this is the double height space. From here is the library that you can see and communicate. So kids are always somehow connected with each other. There's about 600 kids in this school. It's a big amount, mostly guys for mechanics and all that. So we wanted to establish them spaces from where they can see outside to the castle or to the forest. For this lecture room, they said it's wrong that it has windows because kids are not watching to the screen, but into the nature. This is the library where they can see actually the corridor, and from the corridor they can enter inside, and all the corridors are lit from the side with daylight, and in the end they end with the view into the, let's say, natural landscape. And that's the last project for this town I'm showing you. Actually, on the other side of the hill where we were working for the library was another small manor, a very, very small castle with a view towards the center of the town. It was in that kind of state. For years, the municipality was looking for an appropriate program what to do with this building, and it was decaying and becoming a ruin more and more. So from the back side, you see it had also a representative facade with a porch. And a couple of years ago, just when COVID started, they decided to pass this building and give it to an elderly home that wanted to build here kind of intergenerational center with some facilities for older people. So we were working a lot on different studies, how to touch with this big program the existing building. The existing building of this manor is built also of several different stages. It has an entrance arriving to this kind of pergola with the view towards the city. So first of all, the ideas were to cover this courtyard and to do an entrance hall here. But later we decided to keep this as the empty space and organize a canopy around it. So we attached these buildings there on the upper part and all the big volume on this side. So we somehow prolonged this canopy here towards the new addition, and this is going back to this big volume. So the new courtyard was first thought like that, as a kind of a corridor around it, and the rooms are placed here. This is the image of the rooms and the open view that arrives through the building to the landscape behind. The landscape here is really beautiful. It's a hilly position of this manor. That's the Pezza mountain, and that's the St. Ursula mountain. So the views are open to both sides, and we wanted them to be present inside the building. This is the construction site, and the whole new intervention is built out of wood. So this is the glue laminated construction of the public areas of the elderly home, from where you can actually see towards the landscape. And these are the corridors or the balconies of the rooms overlooking the main courtyard. And that's the public kitchen looking towards the mountain. And some rooms on the edges have also 2 windows overlooking the landscape around. So it's not finished yet because the money ran out and the elderly are already living here, but the manor is step by step being renovated, stabilized. It was really in a weak constructional condition. And on the back side, you already see the new part of the elderly home with all this landscape around, and that is how it was in the summer, this main courtyard with people that are sitting around and observing who is coming, who is going, with the reception, and the main aula bringing you down to the west, where you can sit and observe through this window the landscape on the western side. So if we move towards east, I'm mostly working on the edges of our country. I'm not really a central positioned architect. That was a very old project for the city of Maribor, where we were invited to do a renovation of this manor. Actually, we applied for a tender, and we were the only ones who wanted to do this, and it looked like that. It was also a local monument, and with lots of hidden beautiful spaces, and we wanted to connect them through an open floor plan, all the floors, all the levels. And for that, we had to demolish all recent additions. What is red was cleaned, pulled away, and we discovered that there was an arcade, that there was a big hall, and that was a beautiful columned space here behind. So we reorganized the whole in a way that you enter the main square and you go here up to the main old theater room. Or you can enter from this side, going here, and somehow coming to the courtyard. And as you see, this was only a half of the house we had the chance actually to work on. So in the upper floors, there were rooms connected one with each other, and we established again this connection. All these former apartments were joined into the offices for this cultural center that is working now here. And here, there was the first theater of Maribor, and we discovered the traces of this double height space, and we organized an aula, an entrance room here. The question was where to place all these infrastructural elements, because if you are dealing with the heritage, you have so many beautiful vaulted spaces. Where to put the elevator, where to put the toilets, what to destroy that you don't do in a lot of damage. So you see all these yellow elements actually are new, put on the site, demolished only one part of the vault, and this is the double height spaces that somehow we placed or discovered inside the building. So we were allowed, because not having enough information actually, to insert new windows on the place of the former ones. And so the construction somehow started. And I'm just showing you some images that you see how many layers of different pavements, how many tons of materials you dig out to get the light in and to somehow transform the built-in spaces and get the new freedom and connection with the courtyard. So for instance, this space, after the cleaning, after the connections, after the transformation, became the new ground floor aula for the entrance above, with this new stair that is covering all the infrastructure, all the installation, bringing you up. And this is the discovery of the new entrance to the cellar that we found during the excavations. We did a new proposal to connect this double height space, and you see the bridge crossing this double height space, and somehow the new metal intervention somehow presenting the layers of old pavements here below. This was a complicated project. It had to be finished in 1 year with the European money, and you see the worried team here, the conservator, the manager of the site, my colleague Matthias, and the workers. They are always happy, they are always willing to help. So somehow the processes we are stuck in and we had to manage all these things are always, fortunately, supported by a really brave construction team. And I'm showing them always because their company broke down at the time we were working. And instead of exhibiting the project, we exhibited them, helping us finishing the project actually in time. So these are these rooms where we discovered some paintings and the new connections that we opened up with these new programs. And the light coming back again to these existing vaulted ground floor rooms. Now this is a cultural center organizing some events inside these rooms, but also outside in the courtyard where we kept this walnut tree, also presenting the parts of the existing balcony, the existing doors, the new stair with the fragments of the past, and the new binding this building and bringing a new life into this structure. That's quite a new project that I'm showing here. It's a project for Maribor again, because Maribor has a big, big river. It's the river Drava, springing out in Italy, and then arriving to Austria, and then coming to Slovenia, and then joining the down there, the Danube. So I think this is the interconnecting river, somehow connecting also some towns along also in our country. But only Maribor had in the past a much bigger connection with this river that was not really urbanized. You see the land of the river Drava in Maribor. Maribor had an old medieval core with the part called Venice that was destroyed in the 60s. But with the men coming on rafts bringing wood from the mountains, and they landed along the shore of this medieval town. That area later became a popular let's say, swimming resort. And later, when we started this project, became a parking place. So we won a competition for this area here, you see this medieval part of the town. And we won a competition not for just this urban part of the city, but also for a 13-kilometer pathway along the river Drava. So you see this medieval part, you see part of the city, and you see the track of this cyclist and running piste encircling the Drava river here, and somehow bringing two parts of the city along the Drava river together. So this is the medieval part, and this is the more modern, let's say, workers' part of the city. So Drava was till now not really recognized as part of the city. It's much lower than the city above, and the mountain Pohorje is much more an edification spot for the people who live in Maribor. It's quite close, probably some of you have been there, it's close to Hungary. But we wanted the river to become the focus, no? So our idea was actually to create here a public pedestrian area with lots of greenery, and these are some images of the competition, to actually bring the people down to the river. So that's the site that was going on now for 4 years, and the pavement that were done all along this existing historical facades. All the infrastructure that is here below, that is something you don't see, but that's the biggest part of the project actually, and discussion how to treat all the pavements of these public areas. Although the testing of the greenery, the materiality of the Drava stone. So you see part of the upper side that was realized first, enabling still the cars to pass. And later you see these pavements, all these trees that were planted. So people started to come in here step by step, although the part towards the river was not actually working. They started to sit here, they occupied the streets, and the cars are not driving here anymore. So the articulation of the space is mostly done by lights, by stands for the bikes, and this is something that you see, the greenery and the open space bringing people down, focusing the views to the church, making them see or the model or just sitting and observing the river flowing by. The comments we got were, "You brought us the sea." Actually, people came sitting, not paying nothing for the coffee, meeting here, just talking, discussing, and observing the water flowing by. That's an area further on where we just structure this area with belts of greenery, lower plants, bigger trees, lamps. And partly you also see this western part that is going to continue. And some parts you see also connecting with the old bridge. And this is just recent photos that you see how the stairs were done down to the river, where you see the new pavement arriving closer to the water and enabling also people to sit just almost on the river edge. This was finished this summer, and still cars are not driving, and I'm happy about that. It's just an intervention path, and it's a very vivid area. It's a promenade of the city. This is still the same river, but it's an older project. It's Drava River coming to Croatia here. And this is an old manor that we were asked to see if we are interested to work on it. That's an area somehow with small hills coming here to this plain where your country is, on the east of Slovenia, with lots of traditional architecture. But the place we were invited is looking like that. It's an old castle, and that is a supporting economy building, castle outer building, supporting the needs of the castle. And it was partly in ruins, it was partly rebuilt, and we were asked to come here by a supervisor team for the municipality if we are interested to do that for very little money. We had a site visit, and we saw that there are beautiful spaces inside, and there is a square in front of it, and that the municipality wants to do here a music school and a museum. And I said, you know, I would do that project also for free. So we accepted this, and somehow, of course, we were paid a little. But we organized this area all around this inner square. So you see, this is the town center, and that's the X arriving to the inner courtyard, which is embracing, actually, already with all the existing buildings, this end of this X, and that's the castle. We were not allowed to build outside nothing because it's a very protected archaeological site, and all this archaeology means lots of research and lots of money and lots of time spent on that. So we were allowed to do also this on the spot where there were already some cottages attached to the building. So we were working a lot on how to organize this program. So here you see, this is the square where you leave the car here or walk, and that was planned to be a tree here, a big linden tree. We organized the entrance to the museum here and the entrance to the music school there. So the music school is this part, and the museum is that, and this in between is the main hall meeting the programs of the museum and the music school, binding them here together. And this is a new canopy, a new roof, connecting two entrances. So in the upper floors, there are classrooms. This is the lower floor, and the upper rooms are classrooms and the museum. Actually, for achieving all that, this is the plan of the existing. We had to demolish all these partition walls and organize actually how life is going to run through this longitudinal building. So you see, this is the entrance to the museum, this is the main connecting hall, and this is the canopy to the entrance of the music school. That's a small auditorium for the trumpet band, and these are some classrooms and the room for the teachers. And the museum is running through all the spaces, going up there and ending in the upper floor. That's the model of this town, and in the end, the municipality and the museum decided to present mostly here archaeology and some findings from the place. One of my favorites is this monk from the 8th century. You see there is a monk, he has the belt, no? He's a kind of a flat relief figure. We did the model, and we were working a lot how to transform these existing spaces and what actually to exhibit here. So the entrance goes up, and it turns on the same spot. So it's a circular loop, bringing the visitors through also working areas down to the way where they started. It has different levels. And first of all, we wanted to use wood as the new material for the construction, because we were in favor for wood, but in the end, we changed our mind. So that's the construction site. You see lots of ruins, lots of fires, lots of winter time spent on here, and lots of different specialists involved, from the archaeologist. This is Masha again, my colleague, and the workers. And you see how things somehow slowly, step by step, brought in the light and then started to be constructed. For instance, this space was a shed for the animals, became the classroom for the teachers. This is the corridor, and that's the transformation of all the rooms with the new pavement. So we discovered these new vaulted spaces. We brought in the new lit pavement, which is actually a meshed brick. In one moment, we discovered that we had to cover the whole building with the red brick tiles. And we thought, why don't we use brick as the connecting material? Because also the fragments of the archaeology are done out of clay, as is the brick. So we mashed the brick also for the floor, and we somehow presented also these vaulted ceilings. So this is one of the rooms where you see how all the installations run. This was a different room, so-called white room, and this is the presentation of the existing room into something like a temporary exhibition space, which works, for instance, like that. And that's the pathway through this linear building where you enter this from the reception in the end to the archaeology exhibition. This is archaeological placement. We were working also on that, how to present these findings. We used some drawings of a guy who did that many, many years ago as a student, and created some ambiances of the life in the prehistoric times here in this town. So this is the selection of all the materials, arriving to the images of the tradition from these neighborhood areas, where some of those buildings you can't find anymore. They are already gone, and we decided to use this brick net as a kind of a motive for all our new intervention. So you see part that was demolished is now a corridor presenting all the sculptures inside, also opening views to the park, or enabling kids where they sit in front of the lectures in the music school and waiting for their class. That's the upper floor of the music school that has also windows opening up in the park. And that's how the building looks from the outside. Where you see all white is the existing, all the red is new addition, newly built and clad with the brick. So that's the entrance canopy to the museum. You see how it works from coming from the far. This is the entrance to the museum. This is the upper floor of the music school, and that's the courtyard in front of the building with the view towards the castle. And it works like that. If they have open air events in the summer, people gather, and the embracement of the building is somehow binding the community together, or enabling also some spaces where kids can wait in front of the house alone. That's a project, it's quite close to Hungary. It's Goričko area on the peak stretching into the Hungary. And there are 3 castles, one is in Austria, one is in Hungary, one is here, that are living their own life in a way better connected perhaps to this castle to Austria than to Hungary than to Slovenia. It seems to be really far, far, far away. It's an interesting castle. It has 365 rooms, and they are actually seat of the landscape park, of the landscape natural park here. It's seated here. They have big problems of renovating the castle. It was halfly ruined. There was a family living before the war. There was Russian army entering, and later it was halfly ruined when they started to build it. It has an inner big courtyard that has 3 stories on one side and only 1 story on the other. So what we did was first doing 5 bedrooms here because they got money for 5 bedrooms. So they started to offering them 10 or 15 years after being done. Now you can sleep there. And we renovated part of the corridor and some community rooms. Then a couple of years ago, they got some money, and we restored the big chapel that is a circular building that is having weddings and concerts, and we did almost nothing, just the cleaning, presentation, and this bench. And we presented some findings, some sculptures here in the back. But then a couple of years ago, with this Faculty of Architecture from Vienna and Graz and Ljubljana, we did a workshop with the students dealing with the whole countryside around, and we discovered all these beautiful abandoned spaces, and we placed the exhibition inside these abandoned ruins. And I have to say that this presentation had the biggest, let's say, impact on publicity of this building. So slowly, working on this project now for 15 years, I started to think that we should probably leave the spaces as we found them and try to find an appropriate program that could live actually with them as they are. I know that many colleagues of me think the same, but probably all the institutions and also the people who are running this center don't really understand this approach. And I'm not really sure how these things will actually go on with this project. Here's the last project I want to show you. Perhaps I'll show you a bit more precisely. It's the project of renovation of Plečnik's house in Ljubljana. That's a very popular house, and it always was for us architects in Ljubljana. And when we were asked to work on that, I asked myself, is it really necessary to do here something? Actually, the house is working well, the visitors come, and so on. But slowly, we started to work, and I'll explain you how it went. And we started also to think about who Plečnik was and who we are there in the middle of Europe, as you see our small country here on the edge of Mediterranean. We are very much influenced by the north, the Vienna, and always looking towards Italy. So all our architects mostly studied Vienna and Prague, but they were traveling Italy. And they wanted somehow that our Austro-Hungarian architectural image of the city of Ljubljana would become more Mediterranean-like. And that was also Plečnik's struggle. He was not a good student, you know. He was a carpenter's son, and so the father said, you are going to become a carpenter, and he started working in his workshop. But then they sent him to Graz, where they saw that he's drawing really well. So he was a bit ambitious. One of his brothers was a priest, the other one studied medicine. So he went to Vienna, and he wanted to study in Wagner's office, but he said he has no good education. So he started working for Wagner first, and then finished the academy with Wagner, became the best student of Wagner, and got the stipendium. And then he went traveling Italy, of course. And this travel is published in a book, and this travel actually shaped him as a personality. So he starts, that's the years with Otto Wagner. You see, this is Otto Wagner, this is Kočera, and Plečnik is still smiling here in the back. But in later years, he was a very severe personality. He was a very strict professor. And as we read, he was very strict with students, and also as an architect, very reserved. He was very Catholic. But the buildings and, let's say, gestures that he offered to Ljubljana are very contradictory to this image that we got as he was. Actually, they are opening the spaces. They are letting the areas towards the river. They are creating big gestures and connecting the city. They are somehow making out of this small Ljubljana a capital, a city with the big sea, let's say. And these interventions are actually a free space we can enjoy and commemorate, like in the area of this cemetery that you all probably know. So here is the map of this gesture of the Vegova Street, starting with his house and ending in the Zvezda Square. And that is the gesture along the river with all his bridges that are functioning like squares. And there is a beautiful gesture, perhaps, I don't know if you know, on the castle hill. That is the castle. That is with an alley connecting the castle hill with a small ruin here. It is called Schanze. It is a small ruin that he reorganized with a spatial loop. You can circulate around this ruin, going up and down, and in the end entering on the wall above and seeing the city. We are working on his projects, on the research of his project a lot with our students, and discovering that with his daring interventions, which actually would not be possible by our nowadays conservators, he's opening up and making these ruined archaeological spaces public. Now you can climb on these walls. If I was doing that today, there would be a fence around, and I would not be allowed to touch this wall. With a good conservator, he could attach this wall with the new elements, reorganize the space, and making it public. I think he was not aware of what he was doing. He was just doing what he thought it was right. Today, with our eyes, we see that publicity is so important for the heritage, for the history. No? And that's one of my favorite spots above Ljubljana, where in the end, when you enter this bridge, you finish your view with the open horizon to the city. Actually, there are stairs behind, but you don't see them. So we started to work with his house, and through that also more and more with all his works. But his house is here behind this church, and it was a very modest, simple house that his brother bought in 1915. Plečnik moved back from Prague. He was in Vienna working, then he was working in Prague, and in 1921 he returned to Ljubljana, and he moved to this house that looked like that. It was a very modest suburban house with an entrance to the garden and an L-shaped house. So he attached to this house a corridor and this circular building with some rooms. And later on, he reorganized the entrance on the northern side and do another entrance room here where he recycled some columns from his construction site, and he built all that mostly alone. So he was renting that out, this part along the street, and he lived on the back side of the street, looking to the garden. Later on, he bought another house, and with that he gained a big garden here in the back, and he was adding another building here, this winter garden. So we did this research of all the layers of the house while we started working with the house. And we discovered old photos, how he's still standing in front of the house before the addition was done, and how the circular tower was not covered with the greenery. And this is the state when we started working. Actually, the Museum of Architecture was first working in this house, and then they moved to a castle outside Ljubljana, and the house was let to the City Museum. And the City Museum is much better organized than the Architectural Museum, because the Architectural Museum belongs to the state, and the state is not working so well, and the City Museum belongs to the city, which is working very well. So they wanted to renovate the house and enable more space for the visitors that are more and more visiting this house. So there was a couple living here, and this was not connected. This house was the entrance to the museum, and people had to go around and enter the house here. And this was rented, or actually there was an old couple living here, having a car parked here, and this was the courtyard with all these buildings and all that stuff. There was a cellar, and there was here a kitchen for the museum. So there was already, the house was in that kind of state. It was okay, but perhaps needed some cleaning. There was some radiators, some tubes, and there was no protection for the fire. So the house is protected as a state monument. That means you cannot touch anything that we were set, you cannot change anything, it's a state monument. So it was done research on the house, a conservation plan, and this conservation plan actually showed that the violet is very important and that the red is not so important, and perhaps the blue that is here can also be removed. So we started working on that, and all the research was also done during the process of the paints, of the colors. And when we started, actually, they had already a building permit to let's say, renovate the house. And they said, why don't you come and help us with some details, you know, because the architects that did the building permit, they are not so good with the details, but you know, women are often doing details and buying pillows and furniture, or perhaps doing the facade. But we architects are not really interested just in that, no? We are interested in the space organization. And the plan proposed for the construction, for the building permit, they proposed to do here toilets. And we said, it's a pity to do a toilet here in the middle. Why don't we do something else here? Because it's the central spot, and we somehow reorganized the plan for the building permit. We put here the shop and the entrance loggia. We opened the windows on all four sides. And we placed the museum area, the exhibition area here, and the workshop room and the lecture room there. So the toilets are hidden here behind, and people circulate using two entrances and, of course, the patio here at the back. So we were mostly actually working on this entrance area and just actually carefully cleaning, renovating this part. But also here I have to mention, there were big plans to do the under foundation, to stabilize, to really radically reinforce the building, to do the fire protection, because we have to respect all these laws. And all the time you have to ask, is this really necessary? Can we do it smaller? Can we do it less? Not to really be doing too much damage. So you see here how the circulation works. Now, people enter usually here, are here invited into this meeting room, and the visits are organized so you don't get these hearings, you are guided by a guide. And the groups are small, of 7 people, so every hour there is a guided tour, the guide takes you around. Probably some of you have been here. It tells you the stories, it's very personal. He adapts to children, he adapts to professionals, so it's very personal visit. And usually you go around and you enter always here where the architect enters, so you visit the house here. But in the meantime, while you are waiting, you can see the exhibition here, or you can see a movie there, or you can also only sit or enjoy the garden. And in the upper floor, there were plans that actually this would be more private. But when we started working, we discovered that these rooms are really beautiful, because he was first living here in this attic, and the rooms were transformed by him. And they were so beautiful that we convinced the client to leave them open for temporary exhibitions. So you can get up here to the custodian room, walk here through these spaces, and exit there the other staircase. So you can visit the house also and go around it in the upper floor. For all that, these are all the demolitions that you already saw before. All the rat was cleaned, demolished, put away. And all the doors that were existing were step by step removed. So one summer, there are lots of students of restoration came. They started cleaning the house, so now the facade looks like that. And we also placed the entrance from this side to this side. So you enter from the area that was mostly also changed by Plečnik. This is not an existing suburban house. You see, that's a kind of experimental house. He was doing experiments for the library, how the facade should look like, and also here. So there are lots of, let's say, tests of materials, samples of things, of findings inside the house. The tower at the back, it looked like that, and I was struggling for months to keep the greenery, and it was impossible. They had to reinforce the tower, because Ljubljana, I don't know how it's here in Hungary, but Ljubljana is a very dangerous spot for earthquakes. It's completely different than Austria, has no earthquakes, and we have 9, I don't know, or 8. So we have to really reinforce, because the tower was very cheaply built. It had no mortar. It was just dust. So the construction engineer, they insisted on being 2 cylinders here. And we made from the plant that was growing here children, young plants. So they are started, and also the roots were kept. So from all this plant, the new greenery is now covering completely the tower again. And here are some rooms that you know that were probably, they were just reinforced partly, cleaned, brought out and in back again. And after the photos, we found that there was an opening here, and we placed a glass window here above. So that is the entrance lobby of him, and that is the back glass winter garden. And this is the garden, actually, that was also partly renovated. Inside, all the installation were cleaned. So we took the old photos from the 57. When he died, his nephew took the photos as the starting point to present the rooms where he lived. And they were cleaned, reinforced, equipped with the fire protection, with the new heating that is not visible, and placed back again. So when you visit them, you see how the architect lived and worked as a very special personality also for the 50s. So you can touch almost everything, ask questions, and then afterwards you can go to the areas of the temporary exhibitions. This is the upper floor. That is the connection that he established. 3 rooms are axially connected, and all the white windows are beautifully proportioned. And on the other side, the connection goes through the attic that looked like that. And we established a new working area here that also visitors can cross. We had workshops already here. And we were not allowed to do any window because in Ljubljana, roofscape is completely protected. We did 8 or 20, I don't know, different proposals, but the heritage conservator, she didn't accept it. But then we discovered that there is an opening here, and we used this opening to lit actually this cladding. So there is quite enough light coming from this horizontal window to the upper spaces. But most radical transformations were done here in the courtyard that looked like that, where we started to scratch off layer by layer, and we discovered that there were also clusters inside. So you see, this is the courtyard that was established, the new entrance here, and the entrance to the shop with presentation of these rough flustered walls. And it is closed in the winter like that, so that it works like a closed area, and this can be slided inside the backside. All the doors in this front side were like that. They were painted gray. And the conservator, she said, well, you have to keep this all as you found. And we were claiming that this is a museum, it's not a living area anymore. So step by step, we were actually changing also this, let's say, furniture. But this door was very special. Actually, it covered another porch below. So when they started to renovate this door, they found an older porch. And actually, this porch that you see is a mask. It's actually added as a decoration. And we didn't know. We didn't find any documentation, but we assumed that perhaps this might have been done by Plečnik. So we were allowed to keep this door, but the museum, they said we want that it is a glass door inside, that everybody, also if it's locked, sees what's going on. So we decided to put a wooden panel inside, but still having a kind of a panel that can open, and still through the glass you can see when the museum is closed. So this is a walkway through the museum with this wall that was also very rotten and had to be replaced. So we were allowed to place here a photo and exhibit in here his projects for Vienna and Prague. And in this big room that we gained, we wanted to present these windows fronting the street. And there is a model showing all his Ljubljana's projects for kids that can gather around and do some research, what they know, where they see, with 3 big projects on the walls and with some plans and other stuff inside. That's the image of the shop before it was full of stuff, and that's the entrance to the house that is now having a new glazed door, looking to the courtyard, presenting his timeline and project compared with the history of European architecture. And actually, so you come and enter to the house. That's the team, or part of the team, that was involved in the project. Again, was Masha, the architect, working with me, and Matjaž working on the furniture. That is the main conservator, Anna, and she's the custodian, and Irena, the conservator, and this the restorator of the furniture. That's another architect. There were lots of consultants. There was lots of communication. I think we architects are somehow sometimes directing everything and managing and communicating with all the parties involved in the project. And I think sometimes communication is 90% of the success, how you get to a certain result. Here I'm really happy that the house is working really well, but also in the school where we work in a class where he did an intervention with this window, his spirit is somehow becoming more and more actual. When I was a student, we didn't hear nothing about his work. Today, we see his work as, and all the principles in a way that he uses as a very interesting topic of discussion and also implementation in the architecture we do today. So, thank you very much. I hope it's okay if I finish now. Yeah.